Tom Bower has apparently looked at page 14 of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's prenup, and he says there is a clause in there that Harry signed without fully understanding what it meant. Now, before we even get into whether that is true or not, the fact that this claim exists is pretty striking because it would explain so much. If you have been watching the last few years and thinking some of these business decisions do not make sense, this is the thing that might actually connect them. And Bower is not just some random person guessing online. He is the man who wrote the book on Meghan Markle, literally. His whole reputation is built on digging up things that powerful people really do not want brought into the open. Also, real quick before we go further, if you enjoy breaking down royal drama like this, hit subscribe and join us here at Crown Watch. We would love to have you. So why does Tom Bower's opinion carry so much weight? It is his track record. He is not a celebrity gossip writer. He is a former barrister and an investigative journalist who has spent decades going after some of the most protected public figures in the world. Richard Branson, Tony Blair, Robert Maxwell, Simon Cowell. None of those people have successfully sued him. And that detail matters because publishing companies are not foolish. They are not going to publish claims that have not been legally checked and risk ending up in court. So when Bower publishes something, it is because it has been through that process. He has said himself that he does not write about people he likes. He writes about people whose lives are covered in mystery, people who want to hide their secrets, and he just keeps digging until he finds what they do not want us to know. When Meghan Markle came onto the scene, he thought it was fascinating and started looking into how this was all going to play out. He has also said he spoke to very few of her friends because she put what he described as a fatwa on anyone talking to him. He sent dozens and dozens of emails to her friends, and most of them did not even reply. So he went around them and found other people, former colleagues, people with first-hand knowledge of different stages of her career. His reporting relies on interviews, documents, records, and extensive research. That is why when he makes a claim, it gets attention. But here is where we have to be really careful. There is a difference between what Tom Bower has published and what he has speculated about in interviews. He has publicly discussed his views on Harry and Meghan Markle's finances and legal arrangements, but there is no public evidence confirming that he has personally examined their prenuptial agreement, reviewed specific clauses within it, or verified its contents through lawyers who were involved in drafting it. That part is important to keep in mind as we go through all of this. What Bower is arguing is that the legal and financial structure surrounding Harry and Meghan Markle's business interests could become critically important if their marriage were ever to end. And according to him, that is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Most prenuptial agreements are fairly simple. They outline the assets each person brings into the marriage, explain how property would be divided if the couple separates, and often include provisions for spousal support or financial protections. Royal marriages are much more complex because they involve royal titles, public duties, and assets connected to the crown. The details of royal prenuptial agreements are private, but we do know how royal divorce settlements have historically addressed issues like titles, financial arrangements, and official status. For example, after her divorce from King Charles, Diana retained the title Diana, Princess of Wales, but no longer held the style of Her Royal Highness. So these separations involve far more than an ordinary private agreement. Harry and Meghan Markle's situation is also shaped by California law, where community property rules can affect assets and income earned during a marriage. That means earnings from ventures launched while they were married, such as media deals or joint business projects, could become relevant in the event of a divorce, depending on the circumstances and any agreements between the couple. Tom Bower has argued that these legal and financial issues could become especially significant if the marriage were ever to end. But again, there is no publicly verified evidence that Harry and Meghan Markle's prenuptial agreement contains specific clauses governing their Netflix earnings, intellectual property rights, the Sussex brand, or Harry's memoir Spare. The actual terms of any such agreement have never been made public. And that is kind of the whole thing with this story. We are dealing with a lot of interpretation built on a foundation of facts, but the most explosive claims have not been independently confirmed. That said, Bower's broader argument is that Meghan Markle has played a leading role in many of their joint business ventures and has been publicly associated with major commercial projects undertaken by the couple. Under California law, the ownership and division of income from those ventures would depend on a range of legal factors, including any agreements the couple may have in place. Tom Bower has argued that these financial arrangements could ultimately benefit Meghan Markle if the marriage were ever to end. However, there is no publicly verified evidence that she has a primary legal claim to all of their shared revenue streams. Nor is there verified evidence that Harry and Meghan Markle amended a prenuptial agreement after their 2018 wedding, or that Harry signed such an amendment without fully reviewing it. Those claims have not been independently confirmed. What we do know is that prenuptial agreements can be amended after a marriage, and that is not unusual. Couples sometimes update them following major life changes like having children, purchasing significant assets, relocating, or launching new businesses together. Whether Harry and Meghan Markle ever amended a prenuptial agreement has never been publicly confirmed. Tom Bower has suggested that their financial arrangements evolved as their circumstances changed following their departure from royal duties in 2020 when they moved to California and signed major commercial deals. But there is no publicly verified evidence that they executed a prenuptial amendment at that time. And this is where the narrative starts to get a little tangled because you have Bower making these claims, and then you have all these other reports circulating about the state of the marriage. Reports about them sleeping in separate beds, about Meghan Markle allegedly looking up divorce lawyers, about Harry spending time in hotels as an escape. Radar Online published claims that Meghan Markle is cracking under the pressure of public scrutiny and wondering if she would be better off as a solo act. But those reports are coming from unnamed insiders, and none of it has been confirmed. What is interesting is how Bower connects all of this to Meghan Markle's previous divorce from Trevor Engelson. When that divorce happened, very little about the legal negotiations became public and many details remained private. Tom Bower argues that her earlier experiences influenced how she approached business, legal, and media decisions after marrying Harry. People who have worked with Meghan Markle have described her as detail-oriented when it comes to contracts and major business decisions. Tom Bower argues that those experiences influenced how she approached future commercial ventures after marrying Harry. However, there is no publicly verified evidence that her previous divorce directly shaped any legal arrangements in her marriage to Harry. What is publicly known is that Harry and Meghan Markle signed major commercial deals with Netflix and Spotify after stepping back from royal duties, marking the beginning of their post-royal business strategy. Archewell, their foundation and business organization, was established around the same period. Tom Bower argues that their financial and business arrangements became increasingly important as those projects expanded. But again, there is no publicly verified evidence that Harry and Meghan Markle amended a prenuptial agreement during this period, or that such an agreement granted Meghan Markle control over their joint brand. Public records do show Meghan Markle serving in leadership roles within Archewell, but they do not establish ownership rights in the event of a separation. And this is where the financial picture starts to look a little dicey, regardless of whether the prenup claims are true. The Netflix agreement was widely reported as being worth up to $100 million, but industry reporting has consistently noted that this represented the maximum potential value of the contract rather than an upfront payment. The final amount depended on completed productions and contractual milestones. Harry and Meghan Markle released their documentary series, and Meghan Markle's lifestyle programming moved forward, but other announced projects, including the animated series Pearl, were canceled before production, meaning several elements of the original partnership never came to fruition. Tom Bower argues that their Netflix partnership ultimately generated far less than the headline figures reported when the deal was first announced. The exact amount they received has never been publicly confirmed, but he believes their business strategy shifted as several planned projects failed to move forward. Around that same time, Meghan Markle began developing her own lifestyle brand, now known as Ever. Public trademark filings reflected that effort. She also created business entities connected to her personal ventures outside of Archewell. Tom Bower argues that these moves point to a broader financial strategy, but there is no publicly verified evidence that they were part of preparations for a divorce or an asset protection plan. Public records likewise do not confirm claims about separate investment accounts or legal restructuring for that purpose. Bower says these developments show Meghan Markle strengthening her independent commercial position, although those conclusions remain his interpretation rather than independently verified fact. But when you look at the timeline, it is hard not to notice the pattern. Meghan Markle has increasingly pursued business projects under her own name. Her partnership with Lemonade Media was announced as a solo venture. The Bench was published as her own project. Tom Bower argues that 2022 marked a significant shift, with Meghan Markle placing greater emphasis on building an independent commercial identity. While Harry and Meghan Markle continue to work together on selected ventures, she was clearly building something separate. Bower believes this reflects a broader long-term strategy. Although there is no publicly verified evidence that these business decisions were connected to preparations for a divorce or to any private legal agreement between the couple. Now there is another layer to this that makes the whole thing even more complicated. Tom Bower has also highlighted Meghan Markle's relationship with Sunshine Sachs, the public relations firm that represented her during part of her time as a working royal. Sunshine Sachs has represented many high-profile celebrities over the years, including clients involved in major public controversies and high-profile separations. Harry and Meghan Markle later ended their relationship with the firm as they built their own communications operation through Archewell. But then reportedly Meghan Markle brought Sunshine Sachs back, and that detail raised a lot of questions, because if you are bringing back the PR firm that represented you during your previous public reinvention, people are going to wonder why. However, there is no publicly verified evidence that changes in PR representation were connected to preparations for a divorce or that any such strategy existed. Tom Bower argues that Meghan Markle's growing focus on her own business ventures reflects a broader effort to build an independent commercial identity. Those conclusions remain his interpretation. And honestly, the fact that the couple has not directly addressed a lot of this is part of why it keeps swirling. There was that report in Vanity Fair about someone allegedly acting on Meghan Markle's behalf, having a conversation with a publishing house to gauge interest in a book about a post-divorce scenario. The article said that the unidentified person made it clear the couple were not getting divorced, but was seeking to know if such a divorce did happen, would the publisher theoretically be interested in a book that took place in its aftermath. Nothing was ever put on paper. No offer was made. No manuscript was produced. But that claim went unchallenged by the notoriously litigious Sussexes, which strikes a lot of people as suspicious. If it was not true, why not deny it? The silence around that specific report has only fueled more speculation, because this is a couple that has never been shy about pushing back against stories they consider inaccurate. Their willingness to let that particular detail sit out there without a denial is something that even their critics find genuinely puzzling. Tom Bower has also speculated about the future of Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage, offering his own predictions about how events could unfold. Those predictions remain his personal assessment and have not been supported by publicly available evidence. While California law sets residency and waiting period requirements for divorce proceedings, there is no verified indication that either Harry or Meghan Markle has begun or intends to begin divorce proceedings. Meghan Markle has publicly established California as the base for her personal and business activities for several years. Tom Bower argues that if they were ever to divorce, California law and any private agreements between them would likely shape how their finances and business interests are handled. But there is no publicly verified evidence that their prenuptial agreement contains clauses governing title usage, ownership of Archewell, intellectual property rights, or Harry's ability to profit from future projects. Nor is there verified evidence that Harry signed a later amendment without fully understanding its contents. Questions involving their Montecito home, shared assets, or business ventures would ultimately depend on California law and the specific terms of any private agreements, none of which have been made public. Child custody would also be determined by a California court based on the best interests of the children rather than automatically favoring either parent. Tom Bower has offered his own interpretation of how such issues might be resolved, but those conclusions remain speculative and have not been independently verified. What Bower keeps coming back to is the idea that Harry may not fully understand the legal and financial consequences of a possible separation. He points to Harry's emotional appearances during his legal battles in London as signs of the pressure he has been under, though there is no independent evidence linking those moments to the state of his marriage. Tom Bower argues that Harry appears to be undergoing personal and legal pressure, but there is no publicly verified evidence linking that to the state of his marriage. He also suggests Harry may not fully understand the financial consequences of his legal battles, though that remains Bower's interpretation. There is a recurring theme in Bauer's analysis that Harry has consistently been outmaneuvered in situations requiring detailed contractual knowledge, and that his tendency to trust people and rely on emotional judgment rather than careful legal review has put him in a vulnerable position that he may not even recognize yet. And look, if you zoom out and look at the whole picture, Bauer is essentially making a case that the financial arrangements around this marriage have been structured in a way that could become highly significant if things ever fall apart. He has pointed to Meghan Markle's previous legal experience, her detail-oriented approach to contracts, the timing of various business moves, and the shift toward independent commercial ventures. But the most explosive claims, the specific prenuptial clauses, the alleged amendments, the claim that Harry signed something without understanding it, none of that has been independently verified. There is no publicly available evidence confirming any of it. What we are left with is a situation where a highly respected investigative journalist with a track record of uncovering uncomfortable truths is making serious claims about the legal and financial architecture of one of the most famous marriages in the world. But the evidence that would prove those claims, the actual documents, the specific clauses, the verified amendments, remains private. Bauer believes Harry has made decisions whose long-term consequences he may only now be beginning to understand. That remains his assessment rather than an independently verified fact. And honestly, whether you think Tom Bauer is uncovering a real story or connecting dots that are not there probably depends on how you already feel about Harry and Meghan Markle. But the questions he is raising about the financial structure of their partnership are valid questions, even if the answers are not publicly available. The fact that so much of this remains unverified does not mean it is false. It just means we cannot confirm it. And in a story where the central claim is that Harry signed something he did not fully understand, the inability to verify anything is kind of the whole point.